The bustling terminal of Queenstown International Airport was alive with the hum of holiday travel. Families shuffled through with children and towel, business travelers balanced their phones and laptops, and announcements echoed over the loudspeakers. Amid this controlled chaos, Olivia Grant moved with quiet confidence, her navy blue pantsuit crisp and her presence commanding. She had spent years navigating airports, inspecting airline operations, and ensuring compliance with federal regulations. Today, she was just another traveler, excited to return home to Montgomery after a long work trip. Everything seemed routine as she approached the check-in counter, her phone in hand with her confirmed booking displayed on the screen. "Good afternoon," she greeted the ticket agent, her tone calm and professional as she handed over her ID and reservation details. But instead of the usual pleasantries, the agent frowned and shook her head. "I'm sorry, ma'am," the woman said, her voice tight with a rehearsed professionalism. "The flight has been overbooked. We can't accommodate you at this time." Olivia blinked, momentarily stunned. She had booked her ticket weeks in advance and had even checked in online the night before. Her assigned seat, 15B, was clearly shown on her phone. "There must be a mistake," she said, her voice firm but polite. The agent glanced at her screen again, then repeated, "I understand your frustration, but unfortunately, this flight is full. I can put you on the next available one." Before Olivia could respond, she noticed two passengers, a young couple who had been standing behind her, being handed boarding passes and escorted through the gate. They had no visible confirmations or even the urgency she was sure she had displayed. Something about the interaction gnawed at her. Keeping her composure, Olivia pointed toward the couple. "How were they seated when I was here first with a confirmed ticket?" she asked, her voice measured but laced with a growing edge of frustration. The ticket agent shrugged, avoiding eye contact. "It's just the system," she muttered. The system. Olivia had heard those words too often in her career. They were the fallback excuse for countless decisions that overlooked fairness, ignored accountability, and dismissed people without justification. But Olivia wasn't someone who backed down easily, especially when confronted with an injustice. She requested to speak with a manager, and after some hesitation, the agent called over Simone Patterson, the duty manager. Simone arrived with an air of authority, but her expression betrayed annoyance as she approached Olivia. "What seems to be the problem?" Simone asked, her tone clipped and impatient. Olivia explained her situation, laying out the facts clearly and calmly. Yet Simone's responses were evasive, filled with vague references to airline policies and overbooking algorithms. Every excuse felt like a flimsy cover for something deeper, something Olivia had spent her career uncovering in other contexts: bias and discrimination. Around them, a few passengers had begun to take notice, their murmurs growing louder as Olivia pressed for answers. "I just want clarity," Olivia said firmly. "Why was I bumped when I had a confirmed ticket? Why were others seated ahead of me without any visible confirmation?" Simone's composure wavered for a moment, but she quickly deflected. "We're following standard procedures," she insisted, though her voice carried less conviction now. Olivia could feel the weight of the moment, not just for herself, but for anyone who had ever been dismissed or sidelined by a system designed to overlook accountability. She pulled out her phone and said, "As a federal aviation inspector, I am well versed in airline policies and FAA regulations. This situation raises serious concerns, and I'll need the names of everyone involved for my report." The words hung in the air like a thunderclap. Simone froze, her eyes darting nervously toward the phone in Olivia's hand. Around them, the murmurs grew louder, and passengers began pulling out their own phones, recording the tense standoff. But the moment that truly shifted the dynamic came from an unlikely source. A flight attendant named Glenn who approached Olivia quietly, his expression a mix of guilt and hesitation. "Ma'am," he began in a low voice, "there's something you should know, but it has to stay between us for now." Olivia raised an eyebrow, intrigued but cautious. "I'm listening," she said. Glenn hesitated, then sighed. "There's an unspoken policy here. Passengers like you are often the first to be bumped. Management says it's about customer profiles or loyalty tiers, but it's not the whole truth." The admission hit Olivia like a punch to the gut. Her calm exterior faltered for a brief moment before her resolve hardened. Are you saying this is deliberate? Glenn looked around nervously before nodding. Yes, and it's not just this flight. It happens more often than you'd think. As the weight of his words sank in, Olivia knew this wasn't just about her seat on this flight. It was about exposing a pattern, confronting a system that had gone unchecked for too long, and standing up not just for herself, but for everyone who had ever been treated unfairly. And so, with a quiet but unshakable determination, Olivia took a deep breath, ready to turn what started as a frustrating inconvenience into a pivotal moment of accountability. The air around Olivia felt heavier now, charged with a tension that seemed to draw the attention of everyone nearby. Glenn's quiet admission echoed in her mind. She glanced at him, his uneasy expression a clear sign he'd already said too much. But Olivia wasn't about to let him off the hook just yet. "You're telling me this is systematic?" she asked, her voice low but firm enough to cut through the ambient noise of the terminal. "Deliberate." Glenn looked over his shoulder, his eyes darting between the gate staff and passengers who had begun recording the unfolding scene. "Look, I shouldn't have said anything," he whispered urgently. I've seen it happen, okay? And it's not always fair." "Fair," Olivia repeated, her eyebrows raising in disbelief. "You're describing a practice that sounds illegal at worst and discriminatory at best, and you're worried about fair." The guilt in Glenn's expression deepened, but he said nothing more. Olivia studied him for a moment, weighing her next move. She could press him further, demand specifics, but something told her he wouldn't budge, not here, not now. Behind her, the murmurs of other passengers grew louder. A woman nearby whispered to her companion, "Did you hear that? She's a federal aviation inspector." The words rippled through the small crowd like wildfire. Olivia felt the weight of their collective gaze on her, a mixture of curiosity, sympathy, and quiet encouragement. It wasn't the first time she'd been in the spotlight, but this was different. She wasn't just representing herself. She was a symbol now, whether she wanted to be or not. Simone, the duty manager, was back on her phone, speaking in hushed tones while glancing nervously in Olivia's direction. Olivia suspected she was calling someone higher up, perhaps to figure out how to manage this increasingly volatile situation. For a brief moment, Olivia considered simply walking away. She could file a formal complaint, document her findings, and let the system handle it. But deep down, she knew better. The system, the same system that overbooked flights, bumped paying passengers without explanation, and allowed unspoken policies to flourish, wasn't designed to correct itself. Change only came when someone forced it to. Olivia took a step closer to Glenn, her voice softening just enough to convey her sincerity. "Glenn, listen. I'm not here to make your life harder, but people need to know the truth. If there's a pattern here, if this is happening to others like me, it's not just unfair, it's unacceptable. You have a chance to do the right thing. Help me." He hesitated, his internal struggle evident. Finally, he shook his head, his voice barely above a whisper. "I can't. I have a family. If I say anything more, I'll lose my job." Olivia exhaled slowly, understanding but not agreeing. "Fine," she said, stepping back. "But know this, whatever's happening here, I'll find out, with or without your help." As she turned away, her phone buzzed in her hand. It was an email notification from her agency, reminding her of an upcoming compliance audit she was scheduled to lead. The irony wasn't lost on her. She spent her days ensuring airlines adhered to strict regulations, yet here she was, experiencing firsthand the kind of treatment her job was meant to prevent. She opened her phone's camera app and began recording, her voice calm but authoritative as she documented the scene. "Olivia Grange," she said, introducing herself to the lens. "Confirmed passenger on Flight 362 from Queenstown to Montgomery. Denied boarding due to alleged overbooking. Observed multiple passengers allowed to board despite lack of visible confirmation. Airline staff unwilling to provide clear explanation or accountability." She panned the camera to capture the gate, the staff, and the murmuring crowd. The action seemed to unsettle Simone, who quickly ended her phone call and approached Olivia. "Ma'am, I must ask you to stop recording," Simone said, her tone teetering between authority and desperation. Am I breaking any laws by filming in a public space? Olivia asked, her voice steady but sharp. Simone hesitated, then shook her head. No, but it's against company policy to record staff without their consent. Then perhaps your company should reconsider its policies, Olivia replied, not lowering her phone. Especially if it's in the business of denying service to paying customers without cause. The tension between them was palpable. Simone opened her mouth to respond, but before she could, an older man stepped forward from the crowd. Excuse me, he said, his voice calm but firm. I'm an attorney, and from what I've seen and heard, this young lady has every right to document what's happening here. I suggest you let her continue. Simone's face flushed, but she didn't argue. She turned and walked briskly back to the gate, muttering something into her radio. The attorney turned to Olivia, offering a reassuring smile. I'm Richard Porter, he said, extending a hand. I couldn't help but overhear. If you need any legal advice, I'm happy to help. Thank you, Mr. Porter, Olivia said, shaking his hand. But for now, I think I've got it under control. Even as she said the words, she knew she was far from being in control. The situation was escalating quickly, and while she had managed to hold her ground so far, she wasn't sure how much longer she could keep the upper hand. Out of the corner of her eye, Olivia noticed a young woman in an airline uniform watching her intently from behind the gate counter. Unlike Simone or the other staff, this woman's expression wasn't one of annoyance or defensiveness. It was one of concern. After a moment, the woman stepped out from behind the counter and approached Olivia cautiously. Ms. Grant, she said quietly. Yes, Olivia replied, eyeing her warily. My name's Kayla, the woman said, glancing around to make sure no one was listening. I just wanted to say, I've seen things here that don't sit right with me, and I think you're doing the right thing by speaking up. Olivia studied her for a moment, trying to gauge her sincerity. Kayla's nervous demeanor seemed genuine, and there was a flicker of determination in her eyes that Olivia recognized. Kayla, Olivia said carefully, if you know something, anything, that can shed light on what's happening here, I need you to tell me. Not just for me, but for everyone this affects. Kayla hesitated, then nodded. Meet me at the coffee shop near Gate 14 in 10 minutes, she whispered. I'll explain everything I can. Before Olivia could respond, Kayla turned and disappeared back behind the counter, leaving Olivia with more questions than answers. As she made her way toward Gate 14, she felt the weight of the moment settle over her. Whatever Kayla had to say could be the key to unraveling the mystery behind the airline's practices. But it could also open a door to something much bigger and potentially far more dangerous than Olivia had anticipated. Olivia walked toward Gate 14, her steps steady despite the turmoil brewing inside her. The hum of the terminal surrounded her, a constant backdrop to the whirring thoughts in her mind. Who was Kayla, and why was she willing to talk? Could she trust her? And what exactly was she about to uncover? At the coffee shop, Olivia scanned the tables, her eyes landing on Kayla sitting in a quiet corner. The young woman looked out of place, her uniform crisp, but her expression tense, like someone caught between duty and conscience. Olivia approached cautiously, sliding into the chair opposite her without a word. Kayla glanced around nervously before leaning in. I don't have much time, she said, her voice barely audible over the chatter of nearby passengers. If Simone or anyone else sees me talking to you, I could lose my job. Then let's make it count, Olivia said, her tone firm but encouraging. What's going on here, Kayla? Kayla hesitated, her fingers twisting the edge of a napkin. It's not just overbooking, she began, her voice shaky. It's selective. They'll prioritize certain passengers over others, but it's not based on who checked in first or even who paid more. It's complicated. Olivia frowned. Selective how? Kayla bit her lip, glancing around again before continuing. Sometimes it's about loyalty programs, sure, but other times, it's about appearances. Who looks important, who might cause a scene, who won't. And sometimes, it feels personal, like they're making decisions based on bias, not policy. The words hit Olivia like a jolt, confirming what she had suspected. But hearing it spelled out, even vaguely, was something else entirely. Is there any proof? Olivia pressed. Kayla hesitated again, her eyes darting to the door. Not exactly, but I've seen the lists, passenger manifests, notes scribbled in margins, even highlighted names. It's not official, but it's there if you know where to look. Olivia's mind raced. Where can I find these lists? Kayla shook her head. I can't give you access. That would get me fired, maybe worse. But if you file a formal request, they'll have to provide records. Just don't expect them to make it easy. Olivia nodded, her respect for Kayla growing. The young woman was clearly risking a lot by even sharing this much. Why are you telling me this? Olivia asked gently. Kayla sighed, her shoulders slumping. Because it's wrong. I got into this job thinking I'd be helping people, making travel easier. But the things I've seen. She trailed off, shaking her head. I can't keep pretending it's okay. Olivia reached across the table, placing a reassuring hand over Kayla's. Thank you, she said sincerely. You've done the right thing. Before Kayla could respond, her radio crackled to life, Simone's voice sharp and demanding. Kayla, report back to the gate immediately. Kayla paled, quickly standing and adjusting her uniform. I have to go, she said hurriedly. Good luck, Miss Grant. Olivia watched as Kayla disappeared into the crowd, her heart heavy with a mix of gratitude and concern. She had a lead now, but it was fragile, and the stakes were higher than ever. She stood and began making her way back toward the main terminal, her mind already formulating a plan. She would need to escalate this, involve her agency, and ensure every step was meticulously documented. But she also knew she was treading dangerous ground. Airlines wielded immense power, and exposing systemic issues was never simple. As she walked, her phone buzzed again. Another notification, this time from a journalist she'd worked with in the past. The subject line caught her attention immediately. Asterisk, asterisk. Tip received about airline practices. Interested. Asterisk, asterisk. Olivia opened the email, her curiosity piqued. The journalist, Carla Morales, had always been thorough and fearless in her reporting. If Carla was sniffing around this story, it meant there was more to uncover. Without hesitation, Olivia hit reply, typing a brief but pointed response. Asterisk, asterisk, call me. Urgent? Asterisk, asterisk. Minutes later, her phone rang. Olivia, Carla's familiar voice said on the other end. I heard about what happened at the gate. Word travels fast in this industry. Clearly, Olivia replied, her tone wry. What do you know? Carla paused, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial tone. More than I should, probably. A source tipped me off about some internal memos circulating at major airlines. They suggest certain passengers are flagged in ways that aren't, let's say, ethical. It's tied to metrics, optics, and, in some cases, plain old prejudice. Olivia's grip on her phone tightened. Do you have copies of these memos? Not yet, Carla admitted. But I'm working on it. I thought you might be able to help connect the dots, given your position. Olivia considered this. She didn't have the memos, but Kayla's account, coupled with her own experience, was enough to validate Carla's claims. I'll share what I can, Olivia said carefully. But this needs to be handled delicately. If we go public too soon, they'll bury it. Agreed, Carla said. Let me know when you're ready to collaborate. As the call ended, Olivia felt a renewed sense of purpose. This wasn't just about her denied boarding anymore. It was about something much bigger, a systemic issue that needed to be brought to light. But as determined as she was, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was stepping into a minefield. For every Kayla or Carla willing to help, there were countless others who would do everything in their power to keep the status quo intact. She glanced back toward the gate, where Simone was now speaking animatedly into her radio. The airline wasn't going to let this go quietly, and neither would she. The airport buzzed with its usual chaos. Announcements echoing overhead, the rumble of suitcase wheels against the floor, and the occasional bursts of laughter or frustration from travelers. But for Olivia, it all faded into the background as she focused on her next steps. Every instinct told her she was onto something much larger than a single flight. The pieces were starting to come together, but they still weren't enough to form the full picture. She decided to call her supervisor at the Federal Aviation Administration. As the phone rang, she rehearsed how to present the situation without sounding paranoid or overly emotional. When her boss finally picked up, his tone was as gruff as ever. "Grant, this better be important. What's going on?" Olivia took a deep breath and launched into a concise explanation of the events at the gate, the conversation with Kayla, and the hints of unethical practices she'd uncovered. She didn't mention Carla yet, wanting to keep the media involvement under wraps for the time being. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. "This is serious," her boss finally said, his voice lower now, "but you need to tread carefully. If what you're saying is true, we're looking at a significant violation of federal regulations. The airline won't go down without a fight." "I understand," Olivia replied, keeping her tone calm despite the adrenaline coursing through her. "But I can't just let this slide. I need access to their internal documents, passenger manifests, and any communications related to boarding policies." Her boss sighed. "I'll authorize a formal request, but don't expect them to cooperate willingly. And Olivia, watch your back. These kinds of investigations have a way of turning messy." As the call ended, Olivia felt the weight of what she was undertaking. She was no stranger to high-stakes situations, but this felt different, more personal, more charged. She turned toward the airline's customer service desk, her stride purposeful. The representative behind the counter looked up as she approached, her polite smile faltering slightly at Olivia's determined expression. "Hi, I'm Olivia Grant," she said, flashing her federal badge. "I need to speak with your supervisor about accessing flight records." The woman's eyes widened and she quickly called over a manager. Within minutes, Olivia was led to a small, windowless office where a man in a dark suit waited. His demeanor was stiff, his handshake brief. "Miss Grant," he said, his tone measured. "I'm Mark Hensley, Director of Operations. How can I assist you?" Olivia laid out her request, her words professional but firm. She noticed the flicker of unease in Hensley's eyes as she spoke, though he quickly masked it with a neutral expression. "We take all concerns very seriously," he said smoothly when she finished. "However, accessing sensitive passenger information requires proper authorization and a formal legal request." "That's already in motion," Olivia replied. "But given the nature of the allegations, I suggest your cooperation. Transparency will reflect better on your airline than obstruction." Hensley's jaw tightened. "I assure you, we have nothing to hide, but I'll need to confer with our legal team before proceeding." As he stood to leave, Olivia noticed the faint sheen of sweat on his forehead. He was rattled, and that was a small victory, but it also meant he was likely already planning how to stonewall her. Outside the office, Olivia's phone buzzed again. This time, it was Carla. "I've got something," Carla said the moment Olivia answered. "An anonymous source sent me partial scans of the memos I mentioned. They're not complete, but they're damning. Keywords like optics management and VIP profiling. And get this, there's a whole section about low-impact passengers." Olivia's stomach churned. Low impact. "Basically, people they think won't fight back or cause a scene," Carla explained. "It's disgusting. And it lines up with what you've been saying." Olivia clenched her fist, anger bubbling beneath her composed exterior. "Can you send me what you have?" "Already did," Carla replied. "But be careful. Whoever sent this to me is either incredibly brave or incredibly reckless. Either way, someone's watching." The call ended, leaving Olivia with a mix of gratitude and unease. She opened her email and quickly scanned the attachments Carla had sent. The language in the documents was deliberately vague but unmistakably insidious. It confirmed everything Kayla had hinted at and more. As she stood there, digesting the implications, a commotion erupted near the security checkpoint. Passengers were raising their voices, pointing toward a group of uniformed personnel escorting a man in handcuffs. Olivia's heart skipped a beat when she recognized the man. He was the same passenger who had been bumped from the flight before her, the one who had loudly protested and accused the airline of discrimination. She pushed through the crowd, trying to get closer. "What's going on here?" she demanded, flashing her badge again. One of the security officers looked at her, clearly annoyed. "This is none of your concern, ma'am. Step back." But Olivia wasn't about to back down. "It is my concern if this passenger's rights are being violated." "What's he being detained for?" The officer hesitated, glancing at his colleagues. "Disturbing the peace," he said finally. Olivia narrowed her eyes. "That's a convenient excuse. I'll be filing a report on this incident, so I suggest you ensure it's handled by the book." As she walked away, the man's shouts still echoing in her ears, Olivia couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. She glanced over her shoulder, her eyes scanning the crowd. For a brief moment, she thought she saw Simone, the gate agent, standing near a pillar, but when she looked again, the figure was gone. The tension was mounting, and Olivia knew she was running out of time. The airline was circling its wagons, and every step she took brought her closer to the truth and to whatever consequences lay waiting. As Olivia walked away from the chaotic scene, her thoughts swirled with questions and doubts. The sight of the man being detained had left her unsettled. Was he just an unlucky passenger who had made too much noise, or was there something more to his outburst? The timing was too convenient, too coincidental. Olivia's instincts told her that the airline's strategy wasn't just about avoiding a PR disaster. It was about silencing dissent. She pulled out her phone and dialed Kayla. The young woman picked up almost immediately, her voice laced with nervous energy. "I saw what happened," Kayla said before Olivia could speak. "They took that man away like he was some kind of criminal. But he didn't do anything wrong. He just wouldn't stop asking questions." Olivia nodded, though Kayla couldn't see her. "It's exactly what they don't want. Someone drawing attention to their practices. Listen, Kayla, I need you to stay vigilant. Don't engage with anyone who approaches you about this. If you notice anything suspicious, call me immediately." "I will," Kayla promised. "But Olivia, there's something I didn't tell you earlier." Olivia's grip on the phone tightened. "What is it?" "I overheard Simone talking to someone on her headset before you arrived at the gate," Kayla admitted. "She said something about needing to make it look routine. At the time, I didn't think much of it, but now?" Olivia's pulse quickened. Simone's behavior had been suspicious from the start, but this confirmed that she was more than just a cog in the machine. She was actively involved in whatever was happening behind the scenes. "Kayla, you've done the right thing by telling me," Olivia said firmly. "Stay low for now. I'll handle this." She ended the call and took a deep breath, trying to calm her racing mind. Simone's role in this was becoming clearer, but Olivia needed concrete evidence to confront her. She decided to head back to the gate area, hoping Simone might still be there. As she approached, the atmosphere seemed eerily calm. The line of passengers for the next flight was moving steadily, and Simone was nowhere to be seen. Olivia scanned the area, her eyes landing on a side door marked "Employees Only." It was slightly ajar. She hesitated for a moment, weighing the risks, before slipping through the door. The narrow hallway beyond was dimly lit, with the hum of machinery filling the air. Olivia moved quietly, her footsteps muffled by the industrial carpeting. She didn't have to go far before she heard voices. Peeking around a corner, she spotted Simone talking to a man in a suit, a man Olivia recognized from the airline's corporate headquarters. His name was Martin Drake, and he was known for his aggressive tactics when it came to protecting the company's interests. "We can't afford any more slip-ups," Drake was saying, his tone sharp. "That inspector is already asking too many questions. If she gets access to our records, we're done." Simone crossed her arms, her expression defensive. "I'm doing everything I can, but she's persistent. It's not like we can just make her disappear." Drake's face darkened. "No, but we can discredit her. Find something, anything, that makes her look unreliable. We'll leak it to the press if we have to." Olivia's stomach turned. The lengths they were willing to go to protect themselves were staggering. She leaned in closer, trying to catch more of their conversation, when her phone vibrated in her pocket. The sudden noise was faint, but enough to make Simone glance toward the hallway. Olivia ducked back, her heart pounding. She held her breath, waiting to see if they would investigate. After a few tense moments, the voices resumed, and Olivia exhaled silently. She couldn't risk staying any longer. Carefully retracing her steps, she slipped back into the main terminal, her mind racing with what she had just overheard. Back in the bustling concourse, Olivia checked her phone. The vibration had been a text from Carla. ***, just got an anonymous tip. Check your email ASAP. ***. Finding a quiet corner, Olivia opened her inbox. Carla had forwarded a series of scanned documents, this time more complete than before. They included internal emails between airline executives discussing a shadow protocol for managing overbooked flights. The language was cold and calculated, outlining criteria for identifying low-profile liabilities and ensuring they were the ones inconvenienced. One email stood out. It referenced a recent audit by the FAA, noting that certain discrepancies had been flagged but successfully buried. Olivia's name was mentioned as part of the inspection team, alongside a note to monitor her activity closely. Her hands trembled as she read the words. They had been watching her long before this incident. This wasn't just about one flight or one overbooking. It was about a systemic issue the airline had been hiding for years, and they saw Olivia as a threat to their carefully constructed facade. Before she could process the implications, her phone buzzed again. This time, it was a call from an unknown number. Against her better judgment, she answered. "Miss Grant," a deep, measured voice said. "I believe you've been digging into things that don't concern you." Olivia froze. "Who is this?" "That's not important," the voice replied. "What matters is that you back off, for your own good." The line went dead, leaving Olivia staring at her phone, a mix of fear and determination coursing through her. Whoever was behind this wasn't just trying to protect the airline. They were willing to cross lines to ensure their secrets stayed buried. But Olivia wasn't backing down. If anything, the stakes had just become even clearer. This was no longer just about justice for herself or the passengers who had been wronged. It was about exposing a system that preyed on the vulnerable and operated with impunity. She squared her shoulders, ready to face whatever came next. Olivia stared at her phone, her mind racing as she pieced together the puzzle. The anonymous call had rattled her, but it also solidified her resolve. Whoever was behind this operation underestimated her determination to uncover the truth. She knew she couldn't face this alone. Her next move was critical, and it had to be calculated. She dialed Carla, her voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her. "I need you to leak those emails. Send them to every major news outlet. Make sure they know it's connected to me. They'll think twice before trying anything drastic if they know the spotlight's already on me." Carla hesitated. "Are you sure? This could escalate things." "It's already escalated," Olivia replied firmly. "If they want to intimidate me, let's see how they handle the scrutiny of the public." By the time she hung up, Olivia's plan was taking shape. She had one more stop to make before this confrontation reached its peak. She headed to the airline's operations office, where she knew she could access their internal database. As a federal aviation inspector, she had clearance to audit their records, and she was about to use that authority to her advantage. The office was quiet when she arrived, the hum of computers filling the air. Olivia approached the front desk, flashing her credentials to the receptionist, who looked uneasy but didn't question her. "I need access to your compliance logs for the past year," Olivia said, her tone leaving no room for argument. Moments later, she was led to a terminal where she began her search. The system was complex, but Olivia navigated it with ease, her expertise guiding her through layers of data. She uncovered flight logs, incident reports, and internal communications that painted a damning picture. The airline's practices were not just unethical, they were illegal. As she dug deeper, she found something unexpected. A file labeled Operation Overlook. Opening it, Olivia's eyes widened as she read the details. This wasn't just about overbooking or silencing inspectors. The airline had been falsifying maintenance reports to cut costs, putting passengers' safety at risk. The implications were staggering. Olivia quickly downloaded the files onto a secure drive, knowing this evidence was the key to taking them down. She was about to leave when she heard footsteps behind her. Turning, she found herself face to face with Martin Drake. His expression was a mix of anger and calculated control. "You've gone too far, Miss Grant," he said, his voice cold. "You should have known I wouldn't stop," Olivia replied, holding her ground. This isn't just about me. It's about every passenger who trusted your airline and every employee you manipulated. Drake took a step closer, his eyes narrowing. Do you really think exposing this will change anything? The system is bigger than you, bigger than any of us. Olivia met his gaze, unwavering. Maybe, but every system has a breaking point, and I just found yours. Before Drake could respond, the sound of approaching footsteps interrupted them. A group of uniformed officers entered the room, led by Carla. Martin Drake, you're under investigation for fraud, endangerment, and obstruction of justice, one officer announced, stepping forward to cuff him. Drake's face twisted in fury as he was led away, but Olivia felt no triumph. There was still work to be done. As the officers secured the premises, Carla approached Olivia, her expression a mix of relief and pride. The emails went viral. Media outlets are already running the story. Looks like you got the public on your side. Olivia nodded, though her mind was still racing. She had exposed the corruption, but the fight wasn't over. The airline would face consequences, but rebuilding trust in the aviation system would take time and effort. Just as she was about to leave, Carla handed her a note. This was left at your desk while you were gone. No one saw who delivered it. Olivia unfolded the note, her heart sinking as she read the message. Asterisk, asterisk, you've won this round, but the game isn't over. Asterisk, asterisk. The weight of the words hung in the air. Olivia knew this battle had been just one part of a larger war, but as she walked out of the office, clutching the evidence that had brought a corrupt system to its knees, she felt a renewed sense of purpose. The fight for accountability and justice was far from over, but Olivia was ready. No matter what came next, she wouldn't back down.